My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 39 years old, and at my daughter's graduation dinner, my husband stood in front of 32 people and said, "Mia needs to stop chasing airports and learn what real life costs." Everyone went quiet. My daughter looked down at her plate. My mother-in-law smiled like a rule had finally been said out loud. Then Mia reached under her chair, lifted my old black flight bag onto the table, unzipped it, and pulled out the pilot school acceptance letter I had never seen until 3 weeks earlier. The letter was 18 years old. The envelope had been opened. The scholarship page was still inside. My name was typed at the top. Clara Bennett, accepted to Great Lakes Flight Academy, commercial pilot track, fall term. Tuition scholarship awarded. Response required by May 10th. That date had passed before I ever knew the letter existed. My husband Peter had hidden it from me when I was 21, 6 weeks before our wedding, because he thought a wife belonged on the ground. He had spent 18 years calling my dream a phase. Then my daughter found the proof inside the flight bag I had stopped opening after I became his wife. At the dinner, Peter looked at the letter and went completely still. I did not yell. I did not cry. I placed my hand on the black canvas bag and said, "Before you decide whether Mia gets to fly, maybe we should talk about the first letter you kept from this family." The room did not move. Even the server near the kitchen stopped holding plates. Mia sat beside me with her hands folded, not scared exactly, but braced, like a student pilot holding steady through turbulence. I knew that posture because I had taught it to her without meaning to. For 18 years, I had taught my daughter how to stay calm around men who confused control with protection. I grew up 2 miles from a municipal airport outside Dayton, Ohio. Not a big airport, not the kind with glass walkways, moving sidewalks, and departures to cities with palm trees. Just 2 runways, a low brick terminal, 4 hangars, a coffee machine that burned everything it touched, and a chain-link fence that hummed when the wind came through the fields. I was 14 the first time I pressed my face against that fence and watched a small white Cessna lift off at sunrise. The plane looked too light to trust. Then it rose anyway. That was the first lesson flying ever taught me. Something can look impossible from the ground and still know exactly what to do once it has enough speed. I started hanging around the airport after school. At first, I told my mother I was at the library. Then I stopped lying because she stopped asking. She worked nights at a nursing home and slept afternoons with the television on low. My father had left when I was 10. We did not have money for flying lessons. We barely had money for rent. So I cleaned hangars. I washed windshields. I swept oil-stained floors. I carried coffee to instructors and learned the language before anyone agreed to teach me the alphabet. Altitude, trim, crosswind, flaps, pattern, final, go-around. A retired instructor named Annika Reyes noticed me reading old FAA manuals behind the soda machine and said, "If you can show up at 6 every Saturday for 3 months, I'll give you ground school for free." I showed up at 5:30. She gave me my first black flight bag from a lost and found shelf. "Nothing fancy," she said, "but a pilot keeps her papers where she can grab them in a fire." I stitched my initials inside the flap with white thread. C.B. Clara Bennett. Before I was Clara Whitmore. Before I let someone talk me into staying grounded. That bag became the first thing I owned that felt like a future instead of storage. It held my logbook, a borrowed headset with 1 cracked ear cushion, 2 pencils, a plastic plotter, a sectional chart of Southern Ohio, and a granola bar that turned into crumbs in the side pocket. I carried it everywhere like a girl who had been told not to take up space and had found 1 square foot of canvas that belonged only to her. At 16, I knew the sound of every plane that came over our street. The crop duster had a rough cough. The medical helicopter had a heavy chop. The flight school Cessnas sounded like sewing machines in the sky. My mother said I was always looking up, but she said it without judgment. Peter later said it like an accusation. Back then, looking up felt private. It was the one direction nobody in my house had claimed yet. Ms. Reyes said if I wanted the sky, I had to respect the ground first. So I learned weather reports, fuel checks, radio calls, and the kind of patience that makes a young girl feel old before her time. By 16, I had traded enough hangar work for flight hours to know I was not just dreaming. I was good, not brilliant, not born with some cinematic destiny, Good in the way that comes from listening hard, doing the checklist twice, admitting mistakes quickly, and never pretending weather was better than it was. Ms. Reyes said the best pilots were not fearless, they were honest. The sky punishes ego, she told me. It rewards preparation. I wrote that on the inside cover of my logbook. Peter Whitmore met me at the airport when I was 19. He was 22, working at his uncle's auto body shop, delivering parts to a mechanic who rented space in Hangar 2. He had broad shoulders, quick jokes, and the kind of confidence that looked like safety when you were young and tired of doing everything alone. He loved the airport version of me at first. He said it made me different. He came to watch my lessons. He brought cheap coffee and stood by the fence with his hands in his jacket pockets while I practiced landings. He told people his girlfriend was going to be a pilot. I believed the pride in his voice because I wanted to. Looking back, I think Peter liked my dream best when it made him interesting. He liked saying he was with a woman who flew planes. He did not like what flying required of me. Time, money, focus, independence. Maps that did not include him at the center. The first small warning came the winter I earned my private pilot certificate. Ms. Reyes took a photo of me standing beside a Cessna, holding the temporary certificate in one hand and the black flight bag in the other. Peter looked at the photo and said, "You look happy." I said, "I am." He said, "Happier than when you're with me." He laughed after he said it, so I laughed too. That is how some warnings survive. They arrive dressed as jokes. By 20, I was working airport dispatch in the mornings, waitressing evenings, and studying for commercial ground school at night. Great Lakes Flight Academy had a commercial pilot track that was expensive enough to make me afraid to apply. Ms. Reyes made me anyway. She sat beside me in the airport office after closing, watched me type the application, and said, "Let them say no. Don't do their job for them." Peter and I were engaged by then. He had proposed in the parking lot after my shift, using his grandmother's ring. And everyone said I was lucky because he was steady. That word mattered in our town. Steady meant employed. Steady meant local. Steady meant he could fix a water heater and would not leave like my father. Nobody asked if steady could become a lock. The application required a stable mailing address. And at the time, my mother and I were between apartments because her landlord had sold the duplex. Peter said to use his apartment. "We're getting married anyway," he said. "Your mail is my mail." I thought that sounded romantic. I wrote his address on the form. The decision letter came in April. I know that now because the envelope is dated April 14th. I did not know it then. Peter did. He opened it, he read it, he put it in my black flight bag, behind the rain cover, in a pocket I never used. And then he let me believe Great Lakes had not chosen me. The cruelest thing about losing a future quietly is that nobody brings flowers. If someone dies, people come with casseroles. If a door closes without a sound, everyone tells you there are other doors, and then expects you to make dinner. For weeks after the Great Lakes deadline, I checked Peter's mailbox before work, after work, sometimes twice in one day. He watched me do it. He watched me pretend not to care. One evening I said, "Maybe they sent rejections later." Peter leaned against the kitchen counter and kissed my forehead. "Maybe it wasn't meant to be, Clara." I hated that sentence for years, without knowing why. It sounded gentle. It was actually a hand on the back of my neck, pushing me toward a smaller life. I married him in June with the black flight bag in the trunk of my car, because I could not decide whether bringing it inside the reception hall would feel hopeful or foolish. Ms. Reyes came to the wedding and gave me a new knee board wrapped in tissue paper. "For when you go back up," she whispered. I smiled like I believed I would. Peter's mother, Gloria, wore navy lace and told me marriage would give me direction. "Flying is exciting," she said, touching my arm. "But a woman needs a home that knows where to find her." I remember looking at Peter to see if he found that strange. He did not. After the wedding, I moved my things into Peter's apartment. The black flight bag went into the hall closet beside winter coats, then behind a vacuum, then under a box of wedding cards I never reread. After the wedding, practical things arrived in a line. Rent, car insurance, Peter's business plans. His uncle wanted to sell the auto body shop, and Peter said it was the chance of a lifetime. We needed my income for the loan. I kept working dispatch at the airport, but I stopped taking lessons because every spare dollar had a destination before I earned it. At first, I told myself it was temporary. I would help Peter get stable, then return to training. I stored the black flight bag in the hall closet, then the bedroom closet, then the garage loft. Each move pushed it farther from daily sight. When I was pregnant with Mia, Peter carried it down while cleaning and said, "Do you still need this?" I said yes so quickly he looked surprised. "Relax," he said. "I'm not throwing away your little pilot purse." Little pilot purse. He laughed. I did not. Mia was born during a thunderstorm in September. She came into the world angry, red-faced, and loud enough to make a nurse say, "This one has opinions." Peter cried when he held her. I did too. Motherhood did not erase the sky, but it changed its shape. For a while, I thought maybe wanting less for myself was the price of loving her more. That is one of the easiest lies to sell a woman, because it sounds noble. Peter's shop grew slowly and badly. He was a talented mechanic and a careless owner. He underpriced jobs for friends, forgot tax deadlines, bought equipment before paying suppliers, and told everyone he was building something for his family. I kept the books at night after putting Mia to bed. I worked airport dispatch from 5 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Picked Mia up, cooked, cleaned, entered invoices, handled payroll, and listened to Peter tell his friends he had built Whitmore Auto with his own 2 hands. Gloria said he had a businessman's heart. I had the spreadsheets. Nobody asked to see them. Mia learned to walk in the airport terminal because I could not afford childcare some mornings, and the women at the front desk loved her. She toddled between chairs while pilots stepped around her with coffee and weather briefings. At 4, she pointed at a twin-engine plane and said, "Mommy, that one sounds heavier." Ms. Reyes looked at me and smiled. That child is listening. Peter did not smile when I told him. "Don't start," he said. "One airport dream in this family was enough." That sentence became the first written rule of our house, even though no one wrote it down. Men could dream in public. Women could remember in private. Peter could talk about expanding the shop, buying another lift, hiring 2 more mechanics, maybe opening a second location in Springfield. When I talked about taking 1 refresher lesson, he said we had a mortgage. When Mia talked about aircraft, he said she needed hobbies closer to the ground. When Gloria heard Mia identify planes by engine sound, she said, "Clara, you really should give that child normal interests." Normal meant quiet. Normal meant local. Normal meant no runway. I got good at smiling around the word normal. I got good at moving money through our life like an air traffic controller moves aircraft through bad weather. Peter's shop survived because I knew which bills could wait 3 days and which ones would become fires by morning. He called that support. I called it unpaid management. I did not say that out loud. Instead, I wrote numbers in notebooks and kept copies of everything. Years later, those copies would matter. At the time, they just made me feel less crazy. A receipt is a small piece of proof that something happened the way you remember it. I kept the oldest notebook in the drawer beside the stove, because that was where I stood when Peter talked through plans that required my paycheck. January, compressor repair, paid from Clara overtime. March, payroll short, covered by Clara tax refund. July, supplier threat, paid from dispatch bonus. I did not write those notes for court. I wrote them because otherwise I would hear Peter say, "my shop," so many times that I might start believing I had not held it up from underneath. Mia grew up seeing me with a pencil behind my ear and a calculator beside a saucepan. She thought that was normal too. At 7, she made a drawing of our family. Peter was beside a red car. Mia was beside a plane. I was in the middle holding a stack of papers. When I asked what I was doing, she said, "Making sure everyone can go." I put that drawing in the black flight bag years later, after we found the letter, because children sometimes name the truth before adults are brave enough to. Mia grew up with 1 foot in the ordinary world and 1 foot on the runway. She did school projects about Amelia Earhart before she knew how to spell Earhart. She built airplanes from cereal boxes. She corrected cartoons when the wings were drawn wrong. By 10, she could identify aircraft by sound before they crossed the tree line behind our house. Peter called it cute until other people noticed. Then he called it distracting. Gloria called it her mother's old disease. I learned to answer carefully. If I defended Mia too hard, Peter accused me of filling her head. If I stayed quiet, he took the silence as agreement. So I became strategic. I signed Mia up for airport open houses as science enrichment. I bought used aviation books and wrapped them as birthday gifts, from me, not from both of us. I let Miss Reyes teach her basic radio language when Peter thought Mia was helping me file dispatch logs. I told myself secrecy was protection. Maybe it was. Maybe it was also fear wearing a better coat. When Mia was 13, she asked why I stopped flying. We were in the kitchen. Peter was at the shop. She had found my old logbook in a moving box. Not the black flight bag, just the logbook I had kept in my desk after a flood damaged the garage. She opened it carefully, as if it were a passport to a country I had never mentioned. "You had 143 hours, she said. "That's a lot," I nodded. It was. "Why didn't you keep going?" "I was cutting carrots. I remember because the knife stopped halfway through one and stayed there." I could have told her the simple version: money, marriage, life. Instead, I said, "I let other things become louder." She studied me for a long time. "Did Dad want you to stop?" I did not answer quickly enough. She closed the logbook and said, "Okay." That okay hurt more than if she had pushed. Children learn family weather by watching what adults do not say. Peter's rule for our house was never written down, but Mia knew it by 14. Men take risks, women keep the ground steady. Peter invested in equipment he could not afford, called it vision, and expected praise. I took extra shifts at the airport, called it necessary, and was told not to act tired. Peter missed dinner because the shop needed him, and Gloria said he was providing. I missed one school event because of an emergency runway closure, and Peter said Mia needed a mother who was present. The unfairness was so consistent it almost became furniture. Then Mia turned 17 and applied to the Horizon Aviation Scholars Program, a bridge program connected to a university aviation department. She did not tell Peter at first. She told me. I sat beside her at our kitchen table while she filled out the forms, the way Miss Reyes had sat beside me almost 20 years earlier. Mia's hands shook when she clicked submit. I put my hand over hers and said the line Miss Reyes had given me: "Let them say no, don't do their job for them." 6 weeks later, the email came: accepted, partial scholarship, flight lab placement reserved, housing deposit due by June 1st. Mia screamed. I screamed too. Then we both stopped because Peter was home. That is when I realized how much of our joy had learned to check the driveway first. Peter read the email that night at the dining table. He did not tear it. He did something calmer. He folded his hands and said, "Absolutely not." Mia's face went white. I said, "Peter." He looked at me. "I'm not watching my daughter throw herself into debt for a fantasy you never got over." The argument that followed was not loud enough for neighbors. Peter rarely shouted when he wanted to win. He became reasonable. Reasonable can be more dangerous than rage because it invites witnesses to nod. He said flight training was expensive. True. He said aviation was unstable. Sometimes true. He said Mia was young. True and irrelevant. He said she could do 2 years at community college, help at the shop, and revisit the idea later. That was the sentence that made my body go cold. Revisit later. I had heard that language before. Dreams rarely die by execution. They die by postponement. Mia did not argue after that. She went upstairs with the quiet dignity of a person trying not to cry where the wrong people can use it. I stayed at the table because my legs had gone heavy. Peter mistook my stillness for agreement. He reached across and patted my hand. "You know I'm right," he said. I looked at his hand on mine and remembered being 21, checking his mailbox for a letter he had already opened. I did not know yet that the memory was evidence. I only knew my daughter was standing at the same kind of door I had once trusted someone else to open. Gloria came the next day with a casserole we did not need, and opinions she had clearly brought warm. She told Mia, "Your father is trying to keep you safe." Mia said, "From planes?" Gloria said, "From becoming your mother before she grew up." I felt that sentence enter the room like smoke. Peter did not correct her. That night, after Mia went upstairs, I said, "You will not use me as a warning." Peter looked exhausted, which used to soften me. "Clara, you had a phase. You moved on. Why can't she?" "Because she got accepted." He laughed once, not kindly. "So did half the country to something. Acceptance letters don't pay bills." I almost said, "Mine might have." I didn't because I still thought Great Lakes had never sent one. 3 weeks before Mia's graduation dinner, she asked where my old headset was. Her aviation mentor wanted students to bring an object that represented why they applied. I told her the headset was probably in the black flight bag in the garage loft. Peter was at the shop. I was making soup. I heard the ladder scrape. Then silence. Not the silence of searching, the silence of discovery. Mia came into the kitchen carrying the black flight bag with both hands. Dust streaked the canvas. My stitched initials were still inside the flap. C.B. She set it on the kitchen table like it was something alive. "Mom," she said, "you need to sit down." Inside, behind the rain cover in the back pocket, was the envelope. Great Lakes Flight Academy, April 14th. Peter's old apartment address, opened neatly along the top. My hands did not shake when I pulled out the letter. I think shock sometimes freezes the body so the mind can fall apart privately. Accepted. Commercial pilot track. Scholarship. Response required by May 10th. I read the first page, then the second, then the financial award. Then I looked at the date again because dates are harder to argue with than memory. Mia was crying. I was not. Not yet. Did you know? She whispered. I shook my head. She looked toward the driveway, even though Peter was not there. He hid it. I looked at the black bag. I remembered him asking if I still needed my little pilot purse. I remembered checking the mailbox. I remembered him saying maybe it wasn't meant to be. The room tilted slightly. Then it steadied. Ms. Reyes had once told me the first rule in an emergency was simple. Aviate first. Keep the plane flying. So I did. I folded the letter back along its original crease, placed it on the table, and said, "We're not confronting him tonight." Mia stared at me. Why? Because this time, we are going to prepare before the weather hits. Preparation looked boring from the outside. That is how I knew it was real. The next morning, after Peter left for the shop, I called Ms. Reyes. She was 66 now, still teaching part-time, still allergic to nonsense. I told her Mia had found the letter. There was a pause long enough for me to hear hanger noise behind her. Then she said, "I wondered." My grip tightened on the phone. "You wondered?" Great Lakes called me that May. They said they hadn't received your response. I tried calling you. Your number had changed after the wedding. I left a message at Peter's apartment. He called back. I sat down slowly. What did he say? He said you had chosen marriage and asked me not to pressure you. The kitchen clock ticked above the stove. For 18 years, Peter's lie had not only hidden a letter, it had recruited silence around me. Ms. Reyes said, softer now, "I'm sorry, Clara. I should have come to you anyway." I closed my eyes. "You were told I chose." "Yes, I didn't." Another silence. Then Ms. Reyes said, "What do you need?" That question nearly broke me because it did not ask me to explain why I deserved help. I said, "Mia's program. Peter is trying to stop her. Send me the acceptance. I'm not asking you for money. I didn't offer money. I asked what you need." By noon, Ms. Reyes had connected me with Horizon's admissions director, who confirmed Mia's seat was active but flagged because someone had emailed from Peter's account asking about deferral. No official withdrawal, the director said, but the message raised concern. I asked her to send all future enrollment communications to Mia's email and mine only. When I hung up, Mia was standing in the doorway wearing one of Peter's old shop hoodies, sleeves covering her hands. "He emailed them?" she asked. I nodded. Her face did not crumple. It closed. That frightened me more. "I need you to promise me something," I said. "What?" "Do not let his fear become your personality." She looked at the black flight bag on the table. "Then don't let his lie become yours." I had no answer for that. She was right. Then I called the credit union. Mia's education savings account had less in it than it should have. $11,800 had been moved 6 months earlier to Whitmore Auto as a temporary family transfer. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. Peter had taken from Mia's future while telling her to be practical. That afternoon, I called an attorney named Leona Park, recommended by a woman from airport administration who had divorced a man with excellent manners and terrible ethics. Leona listened, asked for documents, and did not waste sympathy where action belonged. "You need an education trust before he reframes this as a household argument," she said. "Do you have funds separate from marital accounts?" I did. Not because I was hiding luxury, because after years of airport dispatch overtime, bookkeeping side work, and contract scheduling for small charter companies, I had learned that money in a joint account could become family money whenever Peter made a mistake. I had saved quietly, not enough to buy back 18 years, enough to protect Mia's first 2. Over the next 11 days, Leona helped me create the Amelia Whitmore Flight Education Trust. Mia hated her full name, but I used it because legal documents do not care about teenage branding. I funded it with $86,000 from accounts Peter had never bothered to ask about because he thought my airport work was steady little money. The trust could pay tuition, housing, flight lab fees, books, exams, medical certification, and required equipment. Peter could not access it. Neither could I for non-education purposes. Mia signed the beneficiary acknowledgement at our kitchen table with the black flight bag beside her. "Are we telling Dad?" she asked. I looked at the bag, the letter, the 18 years inside it. At your graduation dinner, I said, in front of people who heard him call your future a fantasy. The graduation dinner was Peter's idea, which made the timing almost elegant. He booked the back room at Rinaldi's, an Italian restaurant near the shop, and invited 32 people. His mother, his sister, 2 of his shop employees, my airport friends, Mia's science teacher, Ms. Reyes, and several relatives who believed themselves neutral because they had never paid attention long enough to choose a side. He thought the dinner would be a soft landing for his announcement. Mia would thank everyone, Peter would speak about responsibility, and by the time dessert arrived, the room would understand that flight school had been postponed by loving parents who knew better. He did not know that Ms. Reyes was coming with copies of her old phone notes. He did not know Leona Park had sent the trust certification that afternoon. He did not know I had placed the Great Lakes letter, Mia's acceptance packet, the credit union transfer record, and my original logbook inside the black flight bag. He only saw an old canvas bag and assumed, as he always had, that things women put away, stay put away. I wore a navy dress and low heels because I wanted to move easily. Mia wore a cream blouse and the small airplane necklace Ms. Reyes had given her after her first discovery flight. Peter saw it and frowned. Maybe not tonight, he said. Mia touched the necklace once. Definitely tonight. I had to turn away so he would not see my face. The restaurant had white tablecloths, framed pictures of vineyards, and lighting soft enough to make people look kinder than they were. Gloria arrived early and placed herself at Peter's right hand. Ms. Reyes arrived at 6:13, hair silver, posture straight, wearing a black blazer with a tiny airplane pin. Peter greeted her stiffly. He had not seen her in years. I watched recognition move across his face, followed by calculation. At 6:40, after salads, Peter stood and tapped his glass with a fork. The room quieted. Mia's hand found mine under the table. I squeezed once. Peter began with pride. He talked about Mia's grades, her discipline, her big imagination. He thanked teachers. He thanked family. Then his tone shifted into the reasonable voice. Mia has been accepted into an aviation program, he said, smiling like a man announcing a cute inconvenience. We're proud, of course, but as a family, we've decided she will take a more practical path for now. I felt Mia's hand tighten. Peter continued. She'll work at the shop this year, learn the books, save money, and revisit flying later. The word revisit moved through me like cold air under a door. He used it so smoothly. He had practiced. He had dressed control in the clothes of patience, and expected the room to admire the tailoring. Peter continued, dreams are important, but real life has gravity. Clara learned that. She had her own little airport phase when she was young. A few people chuckled politely. Gloria lifted her chin. And she became a wife and mother, she said. That is nothing to apologize for. Peter smiled at her, grateful. Exactly. We don't need Mia running after the same fantasy. That was when Mia let go of my hand and reached beneath her chair. The black flight bag rose into view. It landed on the white tablecloth with a soft, heavy sound. Every conversation in the room died. Mia unzipped it slowly. Not dramatic. Careful. She pulled out my Great Lakes letter and laid it in front of her father. Dad, she said, voice clear, when you say Mom learned gravity, do you mean before or after you hid this from her? For a few seconds, Peter did not understand what he was seeing. His eyes moved from the letterhead to my name, to the date, then to the open envelope with his old apartment address printed cleanly across the front. Color left his face in stages. Gloria leaned forward. What is that? Mia did not answer her. She kept looking at Peter. It says Mom was accepted. Peter reached for the paper. Mia placed her hand flat on top of it. Don't. The room inhaled. I had never heard a room inhale before. Peter looked at me. Clara. One word. Warning. Plea. Accusation. All folded together. I stood, not quickly. 18 years ago, I applied to Great Lakes Flight Academy. I used your apartment address because we were engaged and I was between leases. I checked your mailbox for weeks. You told me maybe it wasn't meant to be. Peter swallowed. It was complicated. Ms. Reyes spoke from the other end of the table. No, Peter. It was simple. They accepted her. His jaw tightened. You don't know what our life was. Ms. Reyes reached into her purse and unfolded a copy of her old call notes, written in blue ink on flight school letterhead. Great Lakes called me May 2nd. I called the number I had for Clara. Disconnected. I left a message at your apartment. You called back May 3rd and told me Clara had chosen marriage and did not want further pressure. Gloria put a hand over her mouth. Peter turned on Ms. Reyes. You kept notes from 18 years ago? Pilots keep records, she said. So do instructors who know when something feels wrong. I loved her for that sentence. I also hated that it had taken 18 years to hear it. Peter looked around the table. This was where charm usually saved him. Not because he was always believed, but because people preferred his version. It was warmer, easier, less demanding. I was trying to protect us, he said. We were getting married. She would have left. Yes, I said. That was the point of the school. He flinched. Mia pulled another document from the bag, her Horizon acceptance packet. She laid it beside mine. You emailed my program about deferring me. Peter's face hardened. Because you were 17. Because you thought you could make it sound like a family decision before I said no. Gloria said, Mia, don't speak to your father like that. Mia looked at her grandmother. Then ask him not to lie like that. The silence shifted again. Not toward me this time, toward Mia. That mattered. I took the trust certification from the bag and placed it on the table. Mia's seat is confirmed. Her housing deposit is paid. Her first 2 years are funded through an education trust. Peter stared at me. With what money? There it was. The question he should have asked years earlier, but not like that. Never like that. I answered clearly. My airport dispatch salary. My charter scheduling contracts. The bookkeeping clients I took after you went to bed. The work you called steady little money. Leona had told me not to over-explain, but some rooms need numbers. So I gave them numbers. $86,000. Separate account. Legally restricted. You cannot touch it. Neither can I, except for Mia's education. Peter's voice went low. You hid money from your husband. I looked at the old acceptance letter between us. You hid a life from your wife. The sentence did not feel rehearsed when it left my mouth. It felt found, like something that had been sitting in the back pocket of the bag with the letter, waiting for air. Peter blinked once, twice. The room stayed still because nobody knew which version of him to stand beside. The husband protecting his family, or the man who had let a young woman check an empty mailbox while her acceptance sat folded in the dark. After that, the dinner became less like a dinner and more like a record being corrected in public. Peter pushed back from the table. You are making me look like a villain in front of our daughter. I almost laughed, but not because it was funny. Because after 18 years, he still thought the problem was how he looked. No, I said. I am making the papers visible. Mia reached into the black bag one more time and pulled out the credit union statement. She had asked for permission before the dinner. I had given it because she deserved to know what else he had moved while calling her dream expensive. She slid the statement toward him. Where did the $11,800 go? Peter's mouth tightened. Gloria looked at him. What money? Peter said, it was temporary. I said, from Mia's education account to Whitmore Auto, 6 months ago. His sister Rachel, who had been quiet all evening, whispered, Peter. He looked at me like I had betrayed him by reading numbers he had created. The shop needed a lift replacement. It was a family asset. Mia said, my school money was a family asset? Nobody answered. That question sat in the room with more authority than any adult. Peter tried the old route. Mia, you don't understand business, she replied. I understand subtraction. A server near the kitchen coughed, then disappeared. Ms. Reyes looked down at her napkin, but I saw her mouth twitch. Peter was not amused. This is exactly what I mean. Aviation people fill your head with arrogance. I placed my logbook on the table, the worn blue one from before marriage. No, Peter. Aviation taught me checklists, evidence, weather reports, weight and balance. It taught me that pretending a storm is not there does not keep the plane safe. I opened the logbook to my last entry before the wedding. 143.6 total hours. Cross-country, night. Instrument training started. Ms. Reyes had signed the page. I did not stop because I wasn't serious. I stopped because someone I trusted removed my runway and then called the fence reality. Gloria began to cry quietly. I had expected anger from her. Tears were worse because they invited sympathy. I only wanted my son to have a stable home, she said. I turned to her. And you thought stability required my daughter to surrender before she tried? Gloria did not answer. Peter sat back down, suddenly tired. What do you want from me? That question was not apology. It was negotiation. I had been married long enough to know the difference. For Mia, nothing. Her program is funded, her documents are protected, Her communications go to her and me only. For the money you moved, Leona Park will send a repayment schedule to the shop. For me, I want honesty in this room. He looked at the table. Fine. I hid the letter. Gloria made a small sound. Mia closed her eyes. I stayed standing because my knees did not trust the floor. Peter continued, quieter. I thought if she went, she wouldn't come back. Ms. Reyes said, so you made sure she couldn't choose. He snapped. You don't know what it's like to love someone who wants the sky more than you. I answered before Ms. Reyes could. You don't know what it's like to be loved only when you stay low enough. After that, the dinner ended in pieces. Not with a scene, not with shouting. People stood slowly, collected purses, folded napkins, avoided eyes. Rachel hugged Mia and said, I'm proud of you. Gloria touched Peter's shoulder, but he moved away from her, which told me even he knew there was no mothering this into innocence. Ms. Reyes came to my side and placed one hand on the black flight bag. You kept it, she said. I stopped opening it. That is not the same as throwing it away. I could not answer. My throat had closed. Peter left before dessert. He did not storm out. He took his coat from the chair, walked past our daughter, paused like he might say something, then kept going. Mia watched him leave with a face too old for 17. I wanted to protect her from that pause. I also knew protection could not mean hiding the truth anymore. There are moments when a parent has to let a child see the broken thing clearly, so she does not spend her adult life tripping over it in the dark. Mia put the documents back into the flight bag one at a time. Acceptance letter, Horizon packet, trust certification, credit union statement, logbook. She zipped it closed and held it against her chest, as if she were carrying both of our younger selves out of that restaurant. On the drive home, Mia held the black flight bag on her lap. The restaurant lights disappeared behind us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Mia said, if you had gone, would you have still had me? There it was, the question under every daughter's guilt. If my mother had chosen herself, would I exist? I pulled into a parking lot because that answer deserved a stopped car. I don't know, I said. Her face changed. People think mothers should answer that kind of question with certainty, but certainty would have been a lie. I don't know what that life would have been. I do know this. You are not responsible for the life I lost. You are part of the life I built after. Those are different things. Mia looked down at the bag. I'm scared he'll hate me. He may be angry. That's not the same. No, she nodded, absorbing the difference. Are you leaving him? The windshield blurred slightly because my eyes filled before I was ready. I don't know yet, but I am done shrinking the truth to fit inside this marriage. That night, Peter did not come home until after midnight. I heard the front door, the slow steps, the pause outside our bedroom. He did not come in. He slept in the guest room. The next morning, there was a text from him at 6:12. We need to talk without an audience. I replied, we needed to talk 18 years ago, but you hid the evidence. Leona will contact you about the account transfer. I put the phone face down and made coffee. It is strange how ordinary mornings continue after a life opens. The kettle still whistles. The dog still needs food. The floor still has crumbs under the toaster. Mia came downstairs wearing Peter's old shop hoodie, the one she used when she was cold and did not want to admit it. She looked at my phone. Did he text? Yes. Was he sorry? I thought carefully. He is upset. Mia nodded. That's not the same either. No, it was not. Over the next week, consequences arrived as emails, bank forms, and silences. Leona sent Peter a formal notice regarding the education account transfer. Horizon confirmed Mia's enrollment. Ms. Reyes took Mia up for a short evening flight, and when they landed, Mia ran across the tarmac with her hair coming loose and said, I didn't feel trapped up there. I hugged her so hard she laughed. Peter watched from the parking lot. I had not known he came. He did not approach us. He stood beside his truck, hands in pockets, looking at the sky like it had personally betrayed him. Peter moved into the apartment above the shop 2 weeks later. He called it space. Leona called it separation. Mia called it quieter. I called it necessary. The house felt different without him. Not peaceful exactly, but less monitored. I had not realized how many of my movements had been shaped by the expectation of commentary. Where are you going? How long? Airport again? More paperwork? Do you have to? Without those questions, time opened in strange corners. I found myself standing in the garage one Saturday with the black flight bag on the workbench, cleaning 18 years of dust from the seams. Mia came in holding 2 mugs of tea. You're restoring it? She asked. I'm apologizing to it. She smiled. That's weird. A little. Inside the bag, we organized everything properly. My old logbook, my Great Lakes letter, Mia's Horizon packet, the trust certification, Ms. Reyes's call notes, the headset with the cracked cushion. Mia placed her new student pilot medical certificate inside a fresh plastic sleeve. Then she hesitated and added a sticky note to the inside flap. Not a quote, not a dramatic declaration, just 3 words. We choose altitude. I looked at it for a long time. In July, Mia left for the summer bridge session. Peter came to say goodbye. He looked thinner, older, less certain. He brought a small envelope. Mia opened it in the driveway. Inside was a check for $11,800, plus a printed payment confirmation to the trust account for the first installment of interest Leona had calculated. He said, "I'm paying it back." Mia said, "Okay." He looked wounded that she did not praise him. I was proud that she didn't. Some things should be returned without applause. Then he looked at me like I was supposed to translate her quietness into forgiveness. I did not. I had spent too many years making Peter comfortable with the consequences of his own decisions. Mia put the envelope in the side pocket of the black flight bag, the same pocket where the old granola bar had turned to crumbs years ago. "Receipts go in the bag," she said. Ms. Reyes would have been proud. Before Mia left, Peter looked at her and said, "I told myself I was keeping your mother safe." Mia held the black flight bag against her side. "You don't have to understand someone's dream to not steal it," she said. Peter closed his eyes. For a moment, I saw the young man from the airport fence, the one who had loved my shine until it pointed away from him. Then he nodded. Fair. It was not enough. It was the first honest thing he had given her that did not ask for something back. Mia left with Miss Reyes, who drove her to orientation because I had a contract shift I could not move, and because Mia wanted her first arrival to be with the woman who had taught 2 generations to stop doing other people's no for them. I cried in the kitchen after they left, not because Mia was gone, because she went. Because the door opened and no one hid the letter this time. That fall, I took my first flight lesson in 19 years. I did not tell Peter. I did tell Mia. She screamed through the phone so loudly, her roommate asked if someone had died. Miss Reyes sat in the right seat. I sat left, hands on the yoke, heart trying to leave my body through my throat. The runway looked longer than I remembered. The plane smelled like vinyl, fuel, and sun-warmed dust. Miss Reyes said, "Checklist." I read it. My voice shook at first, then steadied. Taxiing felt like waking up a language I had not spoken but had never forgotten. At the hold short line, Miss Reyes looked at me. "Ready?" I looked down at my hands. Older, ring finger bare now, still mine. Ready. I did not become a commercial pilot at 40. That is not what this story is. Some doors close and do not reopen in the same place. Some years do not come back just because we understand what happened to them. But I did go back into the air. I logged hours on Sunday mornings. I finished an instrument refresher. I helped Miss Reyes run a scholarship workshop for girls whose families used the word practical like a leash. I started telling the truth without dressing it up first. Peter and I divorced quietly the following spring, not because of one letter, though the letter was the artifact everyone understood. We divorced because the letter showed the shape of a marriage that had been asking me to live below my own ceiling for 18 years. In mediation, Peter tried once to say he had supported my airport work. Leona looked over her glasses and said, "Mr. Whitmore, support is not the same as tolerating income." He did not say it again. Mia completed her first year with good grades, bad coffee habits, and 3 new aviation friends who all called me Mrs. W, even after I told them Clara was fine. She sent photos from the flight line, sunrises, headsets, grease on her hands, a selfie after her first solo, cheeks red, eyes bright, holding a cut shirt tail because flight instructors still do that old tradition when a student solos. I printed that photo and placed it inside the black flight bag beside my Great Lakes letter, not to compare them, to complete the conversation. 2 acceptances, 1 hidden, 1 used, 1 woman delayed, 1 girl launched. A year after the graduation dinner, Mia came home for Thanksgiving and found the bag on the kitchen table. I had added 1 more thing to it, a copy of the flyer for the first scholarship workshop Miss Reyes and I hosted. 12 girls came, 5 mothers, 2 fathers. 1 grandmother who sat in the front row with a notebook and cried when Miss Reyes said, "Aviation is expensive, but so is a life built entirely from other people's fear." Mia read the flyer, then looked at me. "You're teaching now?" "Not exactly. You're building runways." I laughed. That sounds dramatic. It sounds accurate. That night, we made soup in the kitchen. Peter texted Mia a photo of a car he had restored. She answered kindly, not warmly. Boundaries are sometimes the temperature you choose to keep a room survivable. He and I spoke only when necessary. He never became a monster. He also never became the man he wanted people to think he had been. Some stories do not end with villains destroyed. Some end with the record corrected and everyone left to live beside it. I learned to stop asking whether that was enough. Enough for whom? For the girl at the fence, maybe nothing would ever be enough. For the woman with the flight bag, evidence was enough to begin. For Mia, one opened pocket had changed the direction of her life. That had to matter. On the anniversary of her first solo, she mailed me a small patch from the aviation program bookstore. It said, "Check the weather, trust the checklist." I stitched it beside my old initials inside the flap. The black flight bag sits in my office now, not in the garage, not in a closet, not behind anything that belongs to someone else. It rests on a low shelf beside the window where the afternoon light hits the canvas. The bag is still not fancy. One zipper sticks, one strap has a frayed edge. The initials inside the flap are uneven, because 14-year-old me was better with airport mops than thread. But it holds the proof of 3 lives. Mine, the one that got delayed. Mia's, the one that got protected. Peter's, the one that finally had to stand in front of its own choices. Sometimes I open the bag and read the Great Lakes letter, not because I want to punish myself, but because I no longer want to protect the lie by avoiding the evidence. Accepted. Scholarship awarded. Response required by May 10th. There was a yes. There had been a yes the whole time. That sentence still hurts. It also steadies me. Pain can be a compass when it stops being a cage. Ms. Reyes says I fly like someone who respects second chances without trusting them too much. She is right. I pre-flight carefully. I check fuel twice. I do not romanticize the sky. The sky is not freedom by itself. Freedom is having the information you need and the right to choose what to do with it. Peter took information from me and called the result maturity. That is the part I have had to forgive myself for not seeing sooner. Not forgive him, myself, for confusing calm with kindness, for confusing steadiness with safety, for believing that a man who loved the idea of me at the airport would also love the reality of me leaving the ground without him. Mia is 19 now. She calls from campus on Sundays when she remembers time zones exist. She has learned to complain about weather like a pilot, coffee like a student, and bureaucracy like a woman who has already fought one family system and does not intend to be impressed by another. She still carries the black flight bag on important days. Not every day. She has her own gear now, her own headset, her own logbook, her own checklists, but for exams, scholarship interviews, and days when doubt gets loud, she takes the bag. She says it reminds her that proof can sleep for years and still wake up useful. Last month, she called me after a hard landing lesson. Crosswind, too much correction. Instructor made her go around twice. She was angry at herself. I listened until she ran out of technical explanations and finally said what she meant. What if Dad was right and I'm forcing something? I looked out my office window at a small aircraft moving east through a pale evening sky. Your father was not wrong because flying is easy, I said. He was wrong because he decided difficulty meant no before you got to decide what difficulty was worth. She was quiet. Then she said, "That's going in the bag." I smiled. "Write it neatly. My name is Clara Whitmore. I'm 39 years old. My husband hid my pilot school acceptance letter because he thought a wife belonged on the ground. He let me check a mailbox that had already answered yes. He let me call surrender maturity. He let our daughter grow up believing my dream had simply faded with age." Then Mia opened my black flight bag and found the paper he had buried behind canvas and dust. That bag did not give me back 18 years. It did not undo the wedding, the unpaid bookkeeping, the missed deadlines, the mornings I watched planes take off while telling myself I was fine. But it gave the truth a handle. It gave my daughter proof that dreams do not disappear just because someone hides the mail. And it gave me one clean sentence to carry forward. You cannot protect someone by stealing her choice. That's my story. One black flight bag, one hidden letter, one daughter who opened the pocket I had stopped checking. If this story reminded you of a letter, an application, a dream, or a door someone quietly kept from you, tell me in the comments what it was. If you ever had to build an option for someone younger because no one built one for you, I want to hear that too. Like this video if you believe practical should never mean trapped. Share it with someone who needs to check the old bag, the old box, the old drawer, and remember what they once wanted. And subscribe to Quiet Truth Stories for more emotional family drama stories about hidden truth, quiet strength, and the moment one piece of proof changes everything. I'll see you in the next story. The bag stays open now, not because the past changed, but because no one in this house is hiding the mail anymore.